Shays' Rebellion and the Weaknesses of the Articles of Confederation. During the period after the Revolution, our country was governed by the Articles of Confederation. This is a period of about 1781 to 1789. The Articles of Confederation were characterized by a weak central or federal government where states governed the areas under their control, but the federal government was largely confined to foreign affairs and defending the country from external threat. Because of this, there was no common currency or standing army. This led to a difficulty of paying debts or taxes because every state printed their own money. Sometimes banks printed their own money, and there was no common currency to pay debts to investors or banks. And because of this, it led to land seizures and bankruptcies, mostly for farmers. And this caused great social unrest and violent upheaval in the country. This led to an America divided. And it was divided very starkly between two sides. And this is right after we had fought for our revolution. We fought our revolution, gained control of the country from England. We were one at that point, but in the period immediately following that, we of course divided into two camps. One camp was led by Alexander Hamilton. Alexander Hamilton was a war hero, one of George Washington's lieutenants and a Secretary of Treasury. And those who followed Alexander Hamilton were Federalists. So they described them as Federalists, kind of like today we have Democrats and Republicans. One of the parties then was the Federalists. The Federalists were largely backed financially by bankers and merchants from the northeast portions of the country. And their followers were mostly from the northern states. And of course, they believed in a strong federal government. They believed the Articles of Confederation were too weak and wanted to have more centralized authority with the federal government. They were opposed by Thomas Jefferson and his followers. Thomas Jefferson formed a group called the Democratic Republicans. Not too much in common today with today's Democrats or today's Republicans, but the Democrat Republicans were largely farmers and landowners. They came mostly from the south and west portions of the country, and they believed in a limited federal government. They did not want strong powers in the federal government because they believed that led to tyranny, was closer to the monarchy that we just left, and they wanted the maximum rights available to the states and to the individual. This led to Shays' Rebellion. Shays' Rebellion was led by Daniel Shays, who was a war hero and farmer, and he farmed in rural Massachusetts where the rebellion began. He at one time commanded 4,000 armed Massachusetts, what they called Shaysites. And the Shaysites were basically ordinary people. They were farmers. Some of them had lost their farms through foreclosure. Others were at risk of it. And they were unhappy with the way the country was being governed. And they thought the Northeast had too much influence. They were unhappy that the local courthouses were taking their farms away through foreclosure proceedings and the such. That led them to attack those courthouses to stop debt collection. And that was very important because if you had a loan out to a farmer and they weren't able to pay for whatever reasons, usually it related to the lack of a common currency, the money that the farmers were using in western Massachusetts didn't have any value in New York, where maybe the banker or the loan was. And so it was, in order to stop that process, they attacked courthouses to stop the debt collection. And they were largely successful at doing that. The courthouses did close down for a time. Debts were unable to be collected, and it created a sense of anarchy. But they really wanted to spark a revolution on a much broader scale, because they wanted to change our form of government. This led them to an attempt to raid on the armory in Springfield, Massachusetts. This armory was actually historically significant during the Revolutionary War, was the primary place where arms for the Revolutionary Army were kept. It actually stayed in business for over 200 years until the Vietnam War, and was used to store weapons for virtually every war between the Revolutionary War and the Vietnam War. But they attempted a raid on the army. If they had been successful, they would have captured a vast amount of arms. They would have been able to broaden their rebellion, and perhaps even bring down our young country's organizing structure and start another revolution. So this was put back finally by a private state militia organized by Massachusetts. And they defeated the Shayscites, dispersed them, and the rebellion then was over. This led to an important event, which is the return of George Washington. George Washington, of course, had been our national hero, led the successful result in the Revolutionary War. He also was president, and then he was happily retired at Mount Vernon. But this disturbed him greatly. He was begged to come out of retirement by James Madison, and this this leads to the next result, which is the calling of a constitutional convention. The Shays Rebellion had exposed a very weak federal government, and the flaws of our Articles of Confederation. And it led to the Constitutional Convention being convened. This would not have happened without the extraordinary efforts of James Madison. Madison recruited state delegations, states to send delegates to the convention. Some states were very nervous about doing that. He also talked George Washington into presiding at the convention. And George Washington at this time was probably the only person in the country that had so much popularity and credibility that he could make the convention substantive and credible to write a new constitution. So James Madison also wrote most of the words of our new constitution. He's known as the father of our constitution because of that. And we'll talk about more about him later. This led to a much stronger federal government, solved the problems of the currency and the standing army, of which, of course, we have the American dollar. You all know now. That's a common currency that didn't exist before the Constitution. And we have a standing army, of course, which doesn't allow armed insurrections like Shays Rebellion. Before tomorrow, I would like to see everybody go to this hyperlink on James Madison. Tells you more about what James Madison, his impact on our country was. And then these are the notes that I would like you to take and be prepared to answer tomorrow in class. The Articles of Confederation had two major weaknesses that we just discussed. We know who the leader was, and I'd like you to write it in there. What did they attack? What did the Shayscites attack? And then I'd like you to fill out this short chart, which shows who the leaders of the two sides during this period were, what the political parties were named. That would be number 2. What the regions were, whether from the north, south, or west parts of the country, and whether or not that side believed in a strong or a weak federal government.